continue. We had to take a pause, y'all. The baby was fussy.
But work is going well. I just started back. I don't even know if it was in January or February, but I had to go back when my baby was 4 months old. Luckily, I work remote, so it wasn't that difficult, but it has definitely been a transition.
So you were able to take off maternity leave for 4 months, you said?
Yes, about 14 weeks. Due to like having a C-section, you get more time. So.
Okay, that's
Yep.
good. That's really good. What would you say is your biggest challenge having to go back to work and having the baby?
I would say the biggest challenge was just adapting to like my child care situation. Our preference would be for her to stay home with me or just have care in the home. But that wasn't really feasible for us financially. And so it was really about finding a good fit for a daycare or, some type of care situation. It did take a while to find that fit, even when we were on wait lists for daycare facilities. I mean, I was on wait list since I was like 6 months pregnant and still was not able to find childcare right when I needed it. So I would say that was the biggest transition, but also taking on the workload. When I got back to work, I wanted to jump right in and not seem like I was, having a hard time transitioning. And so I had to jump headfirst into the workload while also kind of balancing watching my daughter until we were able to find a child care situation. So I would say that's the biggest challenge.
The biggest challenge would be daycare. Can you elaborate a little bit more on the area that you live in? For those who, you don't mind me sharing that you live in the Atlanta area, on the outskirts of the metro Atlanta area, and which is different than the area that I live in. And do you mind disclosing how much childcare is in your area?
Childcare was a wide range. I would say the cheapest that we found was about $1,400 a month. The most expensive was around $2,400 a month. Majority of the places that we found were around the $2,200, $1,900 range.
Oh, wait a minute. Oh, the baby's coughing. She okay? Well, wait a minute. I have to stop you right there. We're not talking about mortgage payments, y'all. We're talking about child care. Can you say that again?
So the rent, $2,400 a month was one of the most expensive. Yes.
$2,400 a month, y'all, for daycare. $2,400 a month for daycare. Let that sink in. That blows my mind. Okay, I did not know that. I didn't know it went as high as $2,400.
Yes.
I know you gave me some figures. We were talking about it, and I didn't know it went up. That's outrageous.
Yes, and that was more of the norm, the higher numbers. I bring in the 1,400 range because I have a daycare on site at my job, and I was able to utilize that. So that was actually the cheapest option available to us.
And that's at $1,400 a month, y'all.
Yes.
Again, that is some people's mortgage. That is more than some people's mortgages. If you have an older home or older mortgage,
Yeah.
that is crazy. So both you and your husband, so you have a dual income household. So
We
both
do.
you and your husband work. And how, I don't know, I don't want to get your business on with your business out there on YouTube, but I'm trying to phrase that. But even with, dual income, two income household, you live in the metro Atlanta area, financially, how is that? How are you guys able to do all that? Are you comfortable? Is it a struggle?
It's definitely a struggle, so to speak. I mean, you have to be very careful about the things that we, spend money on and be, conservative, a lot more conservative in terms of our spending, and be wiser about, investments and things like that can give us returns. But it's definitely a big adjustment going from just spending money on yourself, of course, and then spending on the baby, formula, food, diapers, clothes, all those necessities, but then also bringing in the cost of daycare. So we kind of split that cost because it was such a big impact to our pockets. So we actually split that right now. And it's definitely felt, in our paychecks. So.
And, as a young married couple, I mean, both of you, you're not that young. I mean, you're in your 30s. I think you you got married when you were late 20s, so you've been married for a minute before you decide to have children. So for all the young viewers out there who are thinking about getting married, or who are already married, what would be your advice to our young viewers?
I would say, try your best to set yourself up for success down the line. I know it's hard to foresee, what you'll be doing later, but just make sure you're making milestones towards your goals while you're young. So let's say if you're, you have a career or you're setting eyes on a career, make sure that you secure that and get comfortable in that space first before you have a family, because I mean, that's just additional cost. Husbands and wives cost money. I mean, kids cost money. So just make sure that you have a good idea of what life costs and what life looks like by yourself, and take it baby steps. So by yourself, then you're also kind of factoring in, is this where I want to live? Is this the car I want? All those types of things by yourself, and then think about additions onto your family. It can be very difficult to, do everything all at once. And sometimes we don't get a good gauge of what life is like when we're doing everything in one full swing. I understand life happens, but if you can, just take it step by step and just allow yourself to settle in each stage of your life. So that way you can make those incremental changes instead of having to, I don't know,
Everything all at once.
do everything at once.
Everything all at once. Good advice. That's good advice. And that kind of led me to the next question, but again, it went out of my head. I was just thinking when you were talking, the next question I wanted to ask. Oh, I know what it was. It's about housing. That is, in this country, that's starting to become a big issue, and a very expensive one at that. You guys, she is a homeowner. You guys, she and her husband own their own home. But when they first started out, they were renting. So, you want to talk a little bit about that, renting versus purchasing your own home, and what
Sure.
would be your advice on that?
Yes, I would say renting is definitely an interesting situation. I don't know what the market's like now, but when I first rented my first apartment, I think the rent was like $987, and that was down in the more southern part of Georgia, or central part of Georgia. And then I moved up to the Atlanta metro area. My rent was about $1080, so like about $1,000. That same apartment 3 years later became a $1,300 apartment for rent. Nothing changed. Everything was the same, but just, the economy and times had changed. I got no additional upgrades to my apartment. It's just over time, the fee increased, or the rent increased. I'll say make sure that you're saving. And again, you have to know yourself and know what you want to do in the future in order to really attain those steps. You have to start early, right? If you're thinking that you want to be a homeowner, know what steps that requires, and make sure that you're, again, incrementally working towards those goals. So that way it's not a panic, and when that time comes, you have everything in line to execute, that goal. I use the example of, I think in I don't even know what year it was. It was a year, like way before I got my house. I was actually looking for my home. I had no money, I didn't have any savings, but I was just looking for the area I wanted to live in. Luckily, I was able to, say, okay, I want to live in this subdivision, and then years later work up to actually getting into that subdivision. And so, I learned everything I needed to learn in terms of like having the money, the down payment, all the things I needed, and I was able to kind of save and make sure that I was ready for that day when it came. So I would say that's my biggest advice if you are trying to switch over, but also understand your situation. Like, my rent is only about $400. It was $400 less than my mortgage, right? And so sometimes that those changes are actually gonna be worth it, that work that you put in, that progress and saving and stuff like that, is actually going to be worth it in the long run. Yes, ma'am.
All right. Well, thank you, my 30-something-year-old daughter. We are going to wrap this video up, y'all. I really appreciate you all listening to us, and hopefully you learned something from this. I did. Just some very good advice, y'all, especially for the younger folks, and uh, doing your research. Basically, she was just saying, do your research, get educated on the process, and for the things that you want to do, and plan. That's pretty much what I got from a lot of listening to a lot of this. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye.